All right, being 6 o'clock, I'm going to call the Coos Bay City Council work session. And would you all rise and join me in the flag salute, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, and welcome. Nice crowd. I'm sure there's lots of things on people's minds tonight. So first of all, I want to remind all the council and staff when we're speaking to turn the mics on. I know that people online have trouble if we don't. So we have two councilors that won't be here this evening, Councilor Sarah Stevens and also Councilor Lucinda DeNovo. So first item, so this is a work session. There will be no actions taken by the council. We just take information if there's going to be provided, and also we'll just discuss items for the council. So this is just a work session. So for public comments, it's a 3-minute time period. I see that it looks like we have a couple items, and I'm going to try to group them together about bike lanes and parking, and we have 3 comments on that. And so we'll take all the public comments to have anything to do with parking and bike lanes, I guess, first. And then there's also John Chaplin has public safety, and then any comments on public safety we'll do in another category. And then if there's anything else after that, you're more than welcome to come up. Preferably, if you could talk about something that's not on the agenda. If you bring it up in public comments, then if, like, for instance, we have a designated bike route down below, which we're going to be addressing, if you do it in public comments, then we wouldn't let you go ahead and take the comment there also. So one or the other. Anyway, Wham, you're the first one. Just give us your name and where you reside, please. City. Just your name and where you reside. City.
Right.
Please.
And I'll indicate when you have 1 minute left.
Okay. My name is Wim de Vriend. I've lived in Coos Bay for more than 50 years, and most of that time I was running the Blue Heron Bistro on commercial. We recently moved to Albany to be close to 2 little grandchildren. They're so cute, you wouldn't believe it. I came here at Adam's suggestion because he is the one that's buying the restaurant from me. And he is hesitant to testify because he's afraid he may get too emotional. Because it's a very serious issue that's come up, which, if I'm correct in my understanding, part of the proposal that was made the other day was to eliminate parking in favor of bike lanes on commercial and possibly other streets and so forth. And obviously, the one on commercial would seriously affect the business, which already has suffered because of the food trucks that were allowed on Front Street without any additional parking. And so parking is the lifeblood, you might say. And so I drove to attend this meeting. I drove 3.5 hours today. And south of Florence, a couple of miles, I saw 2 bikers on the road, a couple. And I thought surely there must be more, but from there until Coos Bay, I didn't see any others. Which raises the question, what are the numbers here? Because if you look at the state statistics, there are about 15,000 or 16,000 cars on an average day passing by the restaurant. How many bikers are there? I think we're probably talking about dozens, maybe, at the most. And for that, you want to upset, I'm sorry, I'm rushing into things here. But I watched the presentation of the expert lady the other day, and that was one of her proposals. It seemed to come down to sacrifice parking for bike lanes. So I'm not against biking. I grew up on a bike practically in the most bike-friendly country in the world. But these people that I saw, they expose themselves to serious danger because they ride on the strip along the road, which disappears off and on. Okay, when the road drops off or there's a bridge and whatnot, there's no place for them to go. I think it's a terribly dangerous thing, and I honestly can't see sacrificing parking, which is the lifeblood of so many businesses, for that. Now, I thought that the lady who made the presentation left out some real possibilities. And I'd like to briefly show you what we came up with here as an alternative. I'm not ruling anything out, but here it is. This is our proposal for Commercial Avenue. Make it one way. It is one way already, but reduce that to one lane, because through the years I've seen plenty of teenagers racing each other on those 2 lanes. Okay, so cut out that 1 lane, and then devote that space to bike lanes if you have to. And then, instead of parallel parking, create diagonal parking, which will create a lot more space, will be good for people. And then I think everybody could be happy, to an extent.
All right, Rep, why don't you leave that?
Yeah. Should I?
Sure, leave it there. Thank you. All right, Dee Dee?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dee Dee Peterson from Front Street Provisioners. I need to say, same with Adam, this is very, very emotional for me. And I unapologetically say I feel that Front Street Provisioners has kind of been collateral damage down on Front Street. There is very little parking left. The parking lot, I do understand, that was proposed, we can't even get a bid on because it's going to be a DEQ nightmare, and I understand that. But if we lose any more parking, that's going to be very, very detrimental for the business at Front Street. I have brought in a managing partner, but he had to work because of staffing. All of y'all understand that, so he's not here with me this evening. And I don't do well with public speaking. But I feel like with Wim's proposal, if we could all kind of work together, like in San Diego, they kind of have almost the same setup. There's parking, and then there's bike lanes, and then there's traffic. So the bikes are a little bit shielded, actually, by the parked cars and not right next to the moving cars. If we could come up with something like that, I think it would be very, very helpful. I feel with the added business down on Front Street, and I'm not even going to get into all of that because, as I said, unapologetically, I feel like my business has been collateral damage. And I'm all for making this community better. I love this community. I am 5th generation this community. And I want to see it grow. I want to see it beautiful. I want to see more people who want to come into my restaurant live here. And I would like to have some think groups or think tanks or something put together where we can all sit down and talk about possible solutions that don't eliminate parking, that don't put the businesses on Front Street in any tighter parking situations, because it's bad down there. And my sweet mom, of course, she's going to come into our restaurant. She goes to all of our restaurants. And she's walking from the Ironworks, she's 80 years old, along the railroad tracks to come into the restaurant with no lights, that uneven road, and it scares me because her little lady friends come with her and they're walking along there because now with all the added business, there's 0 parking. So, and I'm sorry for my nerves, y'all. When I signed the piece of paper, I thought it was like my nurse brain was saying, oh, you have to sign in for this one. So anyway, that's all I have to say, and I hope there will be some consideration. Thank you.
You bet. All right, Adam.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the, oh, okay. I'll try to talk faster. Thank you, members of the council. Well, Adam Gould, Coos Bay. I was actually asked to come here by Adam Palmer, so I will start off speaking on his behalf. I've known Adam a little bit now. He has the Blue Heron just across, just a block from our law office down there. I would say that he has become one of the great young up-and-coming business community and community leaders in our community. I would say along with Councillor Matthews over there. I think we need more people like those two, and I think when they speak on these important issues, I think we really need to listen and take their opinion into account. I do know and I can see every day how this issue will affect Mr. Palmer. Hypothetically speaking, say it's a Sunday in December and you've got the after church crowd coming down for his very lovely Sunday brunch, and you've got perhaps elderly people in a car. If parking spaces are taken away in front of his restaurant, I don't know where they're going to go and where these elderly people who want to attend his brunch are going to walk through a driving rainstorm in the wind during the winter when no bike lane is probably going to be used. So those are the kinds of things I think we need to think about when we embark on these interesting and important ideas. Just like Dee Dee, I'm not anti-bike. I'm very pro-bike. As some of you know, my brother-in-law owns and operates a bike shop in Ashland. That's a very bike-friendly town. I would like us to be more bike-friendly as well, but when we implement these things, we need to make sure that they work for everybody. I was also asked Rod to speak on Roger Gould's behalf. He couldn't be here tonight. He wanted me to remind the mayor that when my father was mayor way back when, and I believe that Mayor Benetti was on the council at the time, there was this big thing that came through the town that we needed to be recognized as some sort of a special tree city. So without giving it much thought, we went, and my dad signed off on this. He was responsible for it. They planted a bunch of trees downtown. Well, what did we end up doing? We ended up taking them out because the trees ended up destroying a bunch of the sidewalks. So we have to think ahead and think, how is this going to work? Does it just sound like a good idea? Is it a good thing in principle to do? Yes, but can we make it work in a way that works for everybody, works for the whole community, and especially folks like Mr. Palmer here who add a whole lot to our community and do a lot for local businesses and tourism. I'd like us to see, thank you, Council. I would like us to explore other opportunities to perhaps expand recreation and bike access in this community. Look what Coquille just did. My good friend, Public Works Director Mark Denning really did some amazing things within the last year there in Coquille, got money and got the thing built, that Trails project, 100 acre woods or whatever it's called, but it looks great. I was wondering why we couldn't do that up on kind of the water board property. I've never understood why we have to wall that place off like we're doing the Trinity test in there or something like that, but it's always been completely, untouchable for any recreation. I think maybe we should revisit that. So anyways, those are my thoughts. Thank you for listening. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. So the first item, for anyone that walked in and didn't realize that we're talking about bike lanes and parking. So is there any more public comments on this topic before I close the public hearing on this topic?
Just one point, Mr. Mayor. I've decided that for my expert testimony here, I'm not going to send you a bill.
You can go ahead. You can send the bill. I'm not sure Melissa's going to pay it, but you can send it. So is there any more commentary on this? Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing on the bike lanes, and I'm going to respond and let any of the counselors. I don't know where this information came from, but I can tell you it's misinformation. This council has not decided in any fashion. We got a proposal, as you stated. That's one option. I don't think any of us on here had decided that's the way to go. I know parking is very critical, having a business downtown. I fought for parking a lot, even when your father, Adam, wanted to take 4th Street parking and put a fire station there, which I opposed drastically. So anyway, I do understand that. And the other thing is, we're not implementing anything, and I think there's going to be a lot more public comment and discussion on this by all means. And Dee Dee, we do have a bid on Front Street. We're moving forward with it. We'll do all the cleanup, brownfield cleanup by the end of this October, and then move on next year and have the parking lot. You want to chime in on the proposal on the bike route yet, or are you going to wait?
Well, I guess that's up to you.
Okay, let me just finish up real fast. So anyway, there are other possibilities like this. I think that's a good thing. We can probably have a town hall meeting on it or a get together with some input because this isn't even on the agenda for us to discuss in the near future that I'm aware of. The other thing, the water board, we will be meeting with the water board in September. You're more than welcome to come. September 5th, I think it is, a Tuesday, and we're going to talk about putting bike paths up there and walking paths. So that's something else that's on the agenda. Anyone else you want to go ahead, and then we'll let the list of councilors.
The only thing I was going to add, and you've kind of already spoken to that, was the intention, I believe, from council as far as guidance was to convene a committee of individuals who would help kind of inform the decision for the bike lanes, wherever we land on that. And that's likely going to involve much of the folks who've already participated and potentially others. We just need a little bit of guidance on how council would like us, if that's an open application process, like we would do when there's a, opening on the library board, or do we, bring in the folks who've already kind of done the work prior to the presentation that we had? What is it your preference? And then we can walk forward with that.
Okay, Stephanie, Carmen?
Are we going to suggest a group meeting again on this? Because I thought this was, just really very preliminary at this stage. And even the presentation, there were a couple of items that we never even saw, and we wanted to see that on paper, how that would work. And I know that parking, for me, I know I brought up parking because there's a lot of curb cuts, a lot of streets that make their way along that route, and I know it's limited. So I don't think we even kind of have a full grasp on how this would even work, because the options were really kind of hard to see, and I think we need to see it better. As for a group, if you're getting back together on this, I do suggest that we do implement a group that has maybe a couple more business owners on it. They've come up with another option that we didn't even think about or that we didn't see.
Just one other thing. I'm glad to hear that you like biking, because I think it's important to integrate that into this community, and that's what this is about. How to get there is up for discussion, but I think it's important that we think about that and future development, and also, Dee Dee, we did Front Street design that's implemented in there, and there will be sidewalks all the way down to the boardwalk on both sides, and there'll be more parking, and all that's gonna be accommodated. But, that's a $5 million project, and so we gotta take it off in pieces. So anyway, Carmen?
Yeah, I'll chime in. A lot of good ideas were brought up, and a lot of good points were brought up today. Mayor, I think you've really addressed most of the things I wanted to say. To Adam's point, the question of can we make it work, we should be thinking ahead. That's exactly what we're doing here. So I appreciate everybody coming out today and trying to, voice their opinions, their concerns, and then B, come up with alternative solutions, possibilities. This is great. None of this is set in stone. However, I do think that biking has its value here in Coos Bay, and especially downtown. And there's just a short section between 101 and Ocean Boulevard where we don't have that connectivity. And I see a lot of people riding from in those areas, and I ride in those areas a lot. And it's really sketchy. And you're right, it is dangerous. And that is the whole point of trying to find a safe way for people to access from 101 to the interior of our community, and then to the ocean beaches. And I think that we can find this solution. I don't know what it is yet, but that's where the investigation of all of this is coming along. And then Mayor, you mentioned the water board meeting and the possibility of bike trails. The water board meeting is on September 7th.
Sorry, 7th. It's
7 a.m. It's very early, but we are excited to bring more biking to this community in general, and projects like that just increase biking overall. And I think the infrastructure for this community to accommodate people with biking will A, lower pressure on parking, and B, be just a healthier, livable community. And Dee Dee, I'm really sorry to hear about the struggles with parking and infrastructure down there. And everybody is working real hard on it. I think you were, the shot that really got everybody starting to work on it. Unfortunately, we're all trying to catch up. So hopefully we can get that stuff fixed and addressed as soon as possible. But, this is where we got to do it. We got to start talking and try to find a way forward. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.
Drew, Troy?
Was interested to hear about the water board trails. After that came up, I was going to ask where that's at. Cutting parking on commercial isn't on the table for me, so.
Okay. I think the area is going to be determined, some preliminary discussion with the manager of the water board. There's 160 acres. It's not going to affect the watershed that he feels that can be utilized, and so that's where it's going to start. But the same one that we have the bike trail at Whiskey Run, same people would be involved, and there's some others that want to get involved that are local here. So anyway, Troy?
I just want to say I really appreciate the comments from the business people down there. I totally understand and empathize with it. But I mean, and I appreciate the return comments here, but at some point we're at, everything's been said, but not everyone has said it, so I'll stop there.
All right, okay, we're going to move on to another topic on public comments, and John Chaplin, Public Safety.
How you doing, Chief?
Just fine. It's actually my boy who's the chief, not me.
You had the hat.
He gave it to me.
Oh, okay.
My name's John Chaplin, Coos Bay, and to limit my emotions, I've actually prepared in writing the points I want to make. But if you guys could grant me like an extra 2 or 3 minutes max, I'll get through it. I won't filibuster.
Okay, so we'll make it 5 minutes? Okay. Is there anyone else going to be speaking on this topic? No? Okay, let's just make it 5 minutes. And he says public safety. I'm not sure exactly what Mr. Chaplin has in mind. I'll tell you what I've told him when I've talked to him on the phone. If there's an item that takes a little bit more time, anyone's more than welcome to call us, the city manager, myself, and we'll try to accommodate, as long as it's within reason. So anyway, go ahead, John.
Okay. So I'm going to speak on some topics, starting with the shopping cart situation I know is going to come up later at this meeting. And it may seem like I'm all over the place, but it's all related. The government exists primarily to serve a limited purpose, at least it's supposed to, a big part of which is public safety. When government fails to perform this fundamental role, they're no longer filling their purpose to exist, really. To allow people to overtly possess stolen property and then shift the costs of enforcement to the people the property was stolen from is not fulfilling the duty of public safety. Will taking stolen shopping carts away in full view of the community cause this element to decide to leave here on their own? Probably not in and of itself. But to not do so sends a message that we are a community that will tolerate just about anything. First they steal a shopping cart, then they steal stuff to fill it with, then they're cited and released, then they fail to appear, rinse and repeat. This isn't public safety, it's lawlessness. We need to have zero tolerance for property crimes because that's how law and order works. If you tolerate any of it, then it doesn't work, and it's not working here, which is evident by the increase in these types of crimes in the last few years, and yes, it's all related. The point is the message needs to be sent loud and clear that we don't allow that here. We need to stop worrying about fixing the greater decay of society and start worrying about how to make our community an island of sanity in a sea of depravity, which is sadly what much of Oregon's become. Some of this is beyond our control, but much is in our control, and it has to start with ending lawlessness. We have the power to do this, but we need leaders with the will to do it, or it isn't going to happen. If we take back stolen property from these people as policy and it becomes known that they will not be allowed to possess it, they will stop stealing it. How hard a concept is that? Who wants their stuff dumped out on the sidewalk by law enforcement every day? Word spreads fast in the homeless cult that exists here. Most thieves don't steal things of no value to them. You say the stores don't want them back. I have a scrap guy I guarantee will not let them pile up at City Hall and recycle them at no charge to taxpayers. But with the type of policies I'm proposing, there won't be many to worry about sooner than you think. One objection to this type of policy is that the police have better things to do. Yes, initially it will take police manpower to do this, but solving the problem correctly will be temporary. By transferring enforcement to the stores, you only raise food prices to citizens who have already paid for law and order through their taxes, and you neglect the duty of government to be the body to enforce laws. It seems like we're promoting vigilantism, because it's on the rise to anybody that's listening in this community. I had a conversation with Mayor Benetti last week, and one of the things he told me was we need more than one community resource officer. No, we need to find ways to not need any. The fundamental disagreement about what the goals of this community should be concerning the criminal homeless population was summed up perfectly. Some want to provide even more services while more flood in, and others want to get them the hell out of here using any means possible. The vast majority of the community, in my view, falls in the second group. Which brings me to my next point, and it concerns public safety. We're told the library is going to cost X amount, and it's going to include a badly needed 911 center. If we badly need a new 911 center, then how about bonding that alone and see what the voters think? A 911 center isn't a complex architectural venture. It needs to have adequate space, be reasonably comfortable, have some parking and modern communications, and that's about it. Yet the cost of that part of the library, I haven't been able to find where it's been broken out accurately. If it has, I apologize, I missed it. It seems like it's all or nothing with public safety held hostage. To hold public safety hostage like this to a pet cultural project is reprehensible. And do you honestly believe it's just a location? Ironically, the same people who say they want the library at John Toppit's wouldn't be caught dead walking around that place with their own kids at dusk. Finally, there's public comment. You allow people to come down here and address you in your house where you control the clock and the microphone. Then when they're done speaking, you grant yourselves whatever time you need to rebut them, which is fine. I understand the necessity of this because you have to operate that way. I don't disagree. However, the community organized a town hall for just such discussion last week. Not a single one of you sitting here showed up. None of you who represent the city of Coos Bay bothered. A city councilor from North Bend was there, as well as a county commissioner. Both spoke and answered questions. Where were you? You post video of your meetings on YouTube for the world to see, and yet you have the comments turned off. This is something you willfully decide to do as it's optional, but why? People who post content online and don't allow feedback generally can't handle the truth. Sticks and stones will break your bones, neither of which are involved. YouTube already has strong policies against threats. So what are you afraid of? Turn on the comments. Don't edit them. You may just learn something about this, how the community really feels. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Can they not comment on public access now, right? Or I mean through this?
I don't believe our YouTube account has public, or has commenting to it. It's
I'm-
just a video
But they
posted.
can comment here publicly, John.
Yes.
That's what this is about. So you're talking about you think they should be able to public comment on YouTube itself?
YouTube comments seem to be the last bastion of where people really say how they feel.
Well, we like to, well,
It's your option.
it is. There's a lot of, I guess that's something for the council to decide. But anyway, on the shopping carts, we're going to be addressing it. I understand what you're saying. I wish we wouldn't have to look into this, but we're going to. I can also tell you that I know some volunteer citizens that have picked them up and taken them back to stores, and stores won't take them. So it's a problem all the way around. I can also tell you, and I guess I'll let the chief and our attorney chime in, if what you're suggesting, if we see a cart in public access or in public right-of-way anywhere going up and down the sidewalk, we should stop and take that cart back. Can we do that? Who wants to chime in? Nate or Chief?
I guess I can take that. I mean, under certain circumstances, yes, we can do that, and we do that in as often as we can. The problem that we have is if we actually stop somebody, first of all, we have to have a lawful reason to stop them. We have to know that that cart is stolen property, that they were not given permission to use that cart, and that store owner actually wants that cart returned and would actually be willing to prosecute the person that has their stolen property, because at the end of the day, it is their property. So we have to make a lawful stop, first of all, and we have to know that ahead of time. If it is a lawful stop and we know that the property owner does want that property back, then we do follow through with that. And if there's a citation that needs to be issued, a person taken to jail for theft, we absolutely take action. That is part of what we want to discuss tonight with an ordinance that requires businesses to, not necessarily like you had said, penalize them. That's not the point. It requires them to take action or allow us to take action, kind of like the Property Watch program that we have. And we're going to kind of have a discussion about that tonight that maybe clears some of that up. But the other thing is you had mentioned better things to do. We never allow our officers to say that they have better things to do. Every call for service is the better thing we need to do. And so we try to handle all calls for service. There's some times where we have to prioritize. There's some times where we have to take a little bit of time before we could get to that because there's priority calls. But we are right now, fortunately, and sometimes it's difficult, but we are responding to every call for service that comes into our dispatch center. And it's about 100 every 24-hour period that our officers are responding to, about 3,000 calls for service per month. And so we're super busy, but I just wanted to make that comment.
Can I clarify one thing? I didn't hear that from officers.
No.
I hear that from other citizens.
And I'm not suggesting you did, I'm just trying to explain that we really have a respond to all call policy right now, and we're fortunate enough to be able to try to maintain that call load.
Nate, you want to chime in at all? You know, and I guess I'm just going to, we sit up here and when we take this office, we are bound and we take an oath to follow the law. And whether we like it or we don't like it, or the restrictions it puts on us, or the challenges, that's what we need to do. I mean, there's some things I don't like that the Ninth Circuit did. It puts us in a real bind. I don't like that people passed Measure 110. I think there's some real problems with it, but they did, and so we're stuck with it. And there's some other things that we're facing. Do I like them? No. But I can tell you, I don't know what we're supposed to do about it. We're trying to find creative ways to do things and to make it better for all the citizens. As I mentioned to you, John, we're looking at relocating the Devereaux Center to a better location. I don't know if anything's better, but the location it's at is not applicable. It can't handle what it has out there. So we know that it needs to be relocated, and we're in the process of doing that. You know, and so these are the things that we're trying to attempt to do. And that's a lot of where it's at. Mentally ill is another issue. Drew can sit here and he'll be glad to talk to you. Probably can talk to you for about an hour about it. And what he's tried to do and get the state to get engaged in this with no resolve. I mean, it's frustrating, and I understand the frustration on your part, but there's frustration on our parts too. And I mean, we're all impacted up here, you know. Stephanie and Lucinda live out in that area, you know, and I've had problems, and I think others have had problems with homelessness. And so I've been dealing with, when I had the restaurant 10, 15 years ago, it was going on. Not to the degree it is now, but it still was going on. Nate, anything you want to?
No, I mean, you pointed out that Ninth Circuit, you know, the state of Oregon passed laws considering what you can and cannot do with someone who is homeless, houseless, wherever you want to put it. And it does put certain restrictions. You can't just put them in a bus and ship them out. I know people talk about doing things like that, but, you know, all that does is get the city sued, and I don't think you want to be in that position of having judgments against the city that we have today.
And I think it's important to realize that that can happen. In fact, that's how this issue came up at Ninth Circuit. Wasn't it Boise? They were sued for $3 million, and they had to pay $3 million. And, you know, they appealed it, and they tried to even go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court wasn't willing to listen to it. So, I mean, what benefit would it be to us as a city if we got sued and lost because we weren't following the law, whether we liked it or not? It just would be an imposition on the city itself and more on the citizens. So it's not an easy balance. It's not an easy thing to address, and I definitely understand the frustration. I do. If there was an answer, I'm always willing to listen. Like I said, you got my number. So, and anyone else? Stephanie, you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say that, you know, I know that the comment on the YouTube thing came up. I actually do that for a living, where I monitor and manage, and have done that for quite a while. And it would take an enormous amount of time to make sure that everything does get answered. So I think that's probably why they want it addressed when we're in a meeting. But also, I get the frustration. I'm frustrated. My husband's right behind you, John. Talk to him about how frustrated it gets. I live out in Empire. But I don't think that having a little bit of compassion, because we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and that's the bottom line. There are people that are in situations. There's working poor that are living out of their car. We know that. We've heard that. So people that are still, you know, they're working. They're trying to make their situation better. And so I know that comments are made out of frustration. I know that our police department is out patrolling the streets. They're not sitting in their station all day long not doing something. They have a lot of things that they are working on throughout the day, protecting and serving the citizens of this community. So, but I get the frustration. I really do. And imagine if citizens are frustrated, how much so it must be for police officers who are there to uphold the law when they run across situations as well. I get both sides.
Any other councilors want to chime in?
I can be brief on my part, and I'll just roll my comments at the end into this. I watched a recording of that town hall. I wasn't in town because I was at the City County Insurance Board of Trustees. I'm the only one ever to be appointed from the South Coast, so I have to show up to that a little bit. I met with the directors of City County Insurance, the League of Oregon Cities, and the Association of Counties to discuss a lawsuit against the state over their handling of the state hospital. Found out that it's been rumbling in the background of a few of those groups. Got a couple of the group's attorneys to agree to sign on amicus or be a party to the lawsuit. The county that was anticipated to spearhead it was looking at something a little more mellow. I spoke with them this morning, and they would like to know more about the opportunity to go after the state for the liability it's causing. The state, looking at the House bills, one of the ones I got a briefing on was Senate Bill 5506, Section 83, where the state has committed $2.9 million to local governments for lawsuits over aid and assist. So people that have been sent to the state hospital to determine if they're able to aid and assist in their own criminal defense, of which the state hospital will only take violent offenders now. The state has put 2.9 mil aside to pay counties and cities and public health entities who they know are going to be sued because of the people they're releasing from the state hospital. So the leadership of the state is well aware of what they've caused for the rest of us, and that is frustrating to us as well. So that's my bit.
If I may, real quick, I know it's my first meeting, so forgive me. As far as the shopping carts, my father worked at the case for 20 years.
Just go to,
Because we have people online that can't,
go ahead, just don't get up on, just give us your,
Yeah.
that's all.
I'll get up on
All right,
on
thank
the
you.
mic.
Palmer, Coos Bay, 24 years, I guess.
No, you don't, have to- just name and,
I can just do it.
Sure.
Awesome. Cool. First time. So my father worked at McKay's for 20 years, and I will tell you as a manager of McKay's, never one time ever did he ever loan out a shopping cart for anything. It's illegal. Shopping carts back then ran between $100 and $400 back then. So every shopping cart, I will tell you, is stolen. So it's impossible. They don't give them out. And if they do, it's not to somebody who looks homeless. I know you can profile, but you can't judge. It's the Christian thing to do. So that's all I had to say.
Okay.
And that's the truth.
all right, thank you.
I did forget to mention that it was mentioned that none of the council was there. This is a volunteer position that we take very seriously, but I had another engagement that night as well for my place of employment.
I actually knew about the two of you. I was informed, but
Well, I think that the important thing is to keep the lines of communication open and have the discussion. I don't think we're ever going to be able to, unfortunately, resolve everything. I mean, I wish we could, but just like coming and talking about possibilities with, the bike lanes and the businesses to make sure that no one's impacted very severely and we're able to address it, I think it's important. And that, I'm glad to see people here. I mean, I walk up and down all the time. You guys can call me. I'll be glad to walk in and have coffee with you and talk to you about it too. Might not make it better, but I'm definitely willing to listen to any ideas. So, any other counselors want to address this?
I'll just jump in and say I am sorry to say I wasn't able to attend the community town hall as well. As it was brought up, this is a volunteer position, and I would love to hear more about what was happening. So I hope that somebody took notes, or if there's a synopsis or bullet points of.
There's a video of it.
There's a video, yeah.
I'd love to check it out and hear it. And so that's something that I am willing to do, and was bummed that I couldn't attend, but
So you
I can't
weren't aware
attend
of it?
everything.
You weren't aware of it?
I did get the email, but I was not able to attend. Just like not everybody's able to attend every one of these meetings. I can't make it to every meeting, unfortunately. But
I am curious, was there some ideas that came out of the meeting that will be coming to us in the future, and you don't have to go?
what really came out that was helpful in that, should I stand up?
Yeah.
yeah,
What came out that I saw that was helpful was the counselor and the county commissioner that were there. They really had more time to explain their dilemmas, their things. I mean, kind of like what you're doing here, but it was more of a give and take, and And it was helpful, and I think it really helped to ease public tensions. Not as much as when I told them the Devereaux Center was moving, though. Unless, of course, God help you, you live in South Coos Bay, but that's a different conversation. So, yeah, that's how I thought that it was different than this setting.
Okay,
And helpful.
good.
And you know, our emails are on the website, the city website, so if people need a phone call from us, send us an email. If they want to talk to us, we can, I mean, I'm open to that.
Understood.
Or give me your phone number and I'll text you while I'm at dinner.
All right, so those are the items that are on this public comment roster, but if there's another comment that someone else would like to make that's on a different subject, please come forward and give us a comment. Anyone?
I would if I could.
Sure. Just give us your name and where you reside.
It's Rob Taylor. I live in Banton, but I do a lot of business in Coos Bay, and I have talked to a lot of business owners. I was one of the ones who helped organize that town hall, and one of the things that we thought would be a good idea, someone came up with the idea of having petitions answering two questions. One of the questions would be, do the people want to have more mental health treatment facilities or demand that the state has more mental health facilities, which goes along with what Drew said. And one of the other things that we discussed was opening up the prison, doing petitions to ask people to open up the prison, such as Shutter Creek. And when I got up, I said, we don't need to do the petitions, and even though it's a good idea, it's okay to do them. I think that all the cities and the county should do advisory questions votes on those two issues. There is going to be a ballot this November, but there will be a ballot in the May primary election, and that's next year, and your city could have those two questions on the ballot asking your citizens whether they want to have more mental facilities from the state and whether they want to have more prisons, such as what Shutter Creek was. And if we could get at least a 50 or 60% turnout and at least get 60 to 70% vote yes on those items, which I think we could, that would be a much better way to present to our governor and our legislators that we're not happy with the direction that they're going, because what they're creating now is a homeless industrial complex. And just like the military industrial complex, the whole goal of the situation is to bring in more and more money to feed the wrong element. And one of the things the city is doing, and I know you, Mr. Mayor Benetti, you mentioned misinformation. The reason there's so much misinformation is because we get mixed messages from our politicians. There were people saying, no, the Devereaux Center is not moving. We heard that you and a couple of others say, yes, the Devereaux Center is moving. And with those types of mixed messages, of course, there's going to be misinformation going around, but it's not the fault of the people. It's the fault of the authorities who are putting out those mixed messages. So one of the things that I would like to see happen is the Devereaux Center is basically partnering with the county and the two major cities. And we don't really know anything from the Devereaux Center because when we look up their taxes, they don't put down who they get their grant money from. We don't know how much Tara Johnson, the director, is making. And with that type of information missing, there's going to be mistrust, where unlike with the city, we can ask for those public records and find out how much does the city manager make? Where does the city get its money from? And those are the type of things that we need to answer. And so I just think there are some answers. There were a couple of other solutions, so I recommend all of you go watch the video. It's in full on the Coos County Neighborhood Watch Facebook page, and you can find it there. And those are my comments, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. So,
I'm sorry, the city manager's income is public knowledge in the city budget.
That's what I said.
Oh, for Tara?
Yes.
I thought I heard city manager.
No, I don't, he meant the Devereaux Center.
Should be on the 990.
Yeah, he was stating that the city officials' salaries are public knowledge, but however, Tara's is not.
Right.
My hearing isn't great.
Join the crowd.
Tara's should be, though. It should be on their 990.
I don't think it is. So anyway, I don't think it's a bad idea, but that would probably have to come from the county because you want a county advisory vote on that. you can do advisory votes. And so I think that's something that the county would have to address. I mean, if we did it just for the city, it would be minimal. I think we want to get a whole county outlook if that's going to be the case. All right, any other comments? Anyway, thank you everyone for the comments, but anyone else? All right, is it different than what's already been discussed, Wim?
No, it's about shopping carts.
Well, it's coming up, so if you want to address it during that time, you're more than welcome to.
It was brought up that some people would, pick them up and bring them back.
You have to go up to go up to, the thing, I mean, if we could just have an open discussion, that'd be great, but, so the reason for the mics is that anyone that's online, they can't hear you unless you're at the mic. That's the reason.
Fair enough. I'm sorry. All I wanted to say was that it's been brought up that shopping carts can be, taken and brought back to where they belonged. I did that a few times because they were accumulating at the bottom of my street. But I found soon enough that if you don't have a big van or a pickup truck, you really can't do it. They won't fit in a car. So,
Right.
so there's only so much you can do.
Correct.
But on a similar topic, you might, maybe you have, but you might check what other cities are doing about this, because in Albany, I don't see a real homeless problem. And I've asked how they do it, and apparently they have designated a certain area where they can camp, and that's it, no place else. That may be part of the secret.
All right, so I just had a mayor's conference with the mayor of Albany, and we sat and talked a lot, and what came up, homelessness. And you're right, they have one area, but that area is full, and they were having to look at other areas. I mean, yes, there's different ways to approach it, but, same thing with North Bend, they have certain areas. But when you grow out that area like they do up in Albany, then it's a problem. And it's a problem for them. And so this is a problem throughout the state. There wasn't one mayor up there, and there was 81, that didn't have a problem with homelessness. And it was one of the main topics that we talked about. And every time we meet at a League of Oregon Cities meeting, which is in October, it'll be brought up. And when we have a mayor's conference the following, in that same year, it'll be brought up again. This has been on the topic for the last 3 years. So,
The growth industry.
yeah, unfortunately. All right. Okay. Anyone else? All right, then we'll get on to the agenda. First item on the agenda this evening, discussion of ODOT proposal to designate Oregon Coast Bike Route as a U.S. bike route. Jim.
Thank you. Good evening. The Oregon Department of Transportation reached out to inform the city that ODOT is pursuing a U.S. bike route designation from the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials for the Oregon Coast Bike Route. For most of the cities and counties along the Oregon Coast Bike Route, nothing will change along the route aside from ODOT installing and maintaining U.S. bike route wayfinding signage. If the designation is achieved, the new signage will likely be mounted on the same existing Oregon Coast Bike Route signage. Most of these signs are limited to the state highway, and some signage on routes that travel into local cities like ours. The Oregon Coast Bike Route follows Newmark and South Empire Boulevard. As part of the application process for the U.S. Bike Route designation, ODOT will be submitting the application and doing the legwork. They ask for your support for those portions of the Oregon Coast Bike Route that are on city roads. Your support can be a letter of support or a city council resolution. The U.S. Bike Route System is developing a national network of bicycle routes, and the U.S. Bicycle Route designation brings significant economic, transportation, environmental, and health benefits and puts communities on the map as a bicycle tourism destination. Designing a U.S. bike route creates interstate connections and possibilities of cross-country bicycle travel, bring out-of-state tourism spending, and generating interest in a region. U.S. bike routes use existing facilities, in this case, our existing Oregon Coast Bike Route. The designation to the US bike route along a particular roadway does not mandate any changes in maintenance or require us to do any facility upgrades. And with that, that's my presentation, and I'll take any questions.
Okay, so for clarification, this is an existing bike route that they're going to promote and put signage up and change the name. Is that basically it?
That's right.
Okay. And do we have a map that we can put up and show what the bike route is?
It's right at the SWAC entrance, the old entrance before the main entrance, and it goes to Cape Arago Highway and takes a left and goes to the city border.
So it's just, ODOT wants to change the name, and it's an existing bike route, and they want to put some signage up. So, council, comments for Jim?
If they change their expectations for taking this title down the road, can we just step back out of this? It's my pessimistic side.
I don't know. I'm sure we can, but to get the bike route initiated throughout the state, every owner of a piece of the route has to agree.
It gives us leverage.
So this is a long process.
It could be, but the fact that the Oregon Coast bike route already exists is probably faster than creating a bike route from scratch.
Yeah. Any other comments for Jim? Or?
So that bike route is marked and labeled, and it's wide enough for bikes?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, some of it is shared.
Okay.
But like we did some improvements on South Empire Boulevard, which provides actual bike lanes for that portion of the route.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else? So this will come back before the council meeting in 2 weeks, correct? All right. All right. Next item on the agenda is continued discussion regarding proposed shopping cart ordinance. Nicole?
Yes, thank you. So we are coming back tonight following the last work session discussion with some information that we've gathered. We left the last work session with a request to potentially look at what other cities were doing, to also look at if we could find costs for systems that might keep carts on a store's property. We also were going to look at if there would be any potential permitting issues, if we would have to, do any permitting for any work that they'd need to do to modify their parking lots. And then there was also a request to potentially look for a funding source if we were to potentially assist with any of those costs, very much similar to what we just did with the FOG program. So we all kind of broke that up, shared the load a little bit. I'm just going to summarize, and then, of course, anybody here from staff can help fill in some gaps. We have reached out to several of the other communities in the state. Generally, across the board, most communities are really sticking to the ORS that's already in place. Where you see some variance is going to be in the the fines associated with the length of times, those kinds of things. Those are kind of the areas that cities are changing from what the state's ORS shows. We also have some information that was given to us by one of our local stores. They had investigated the cost of putting in the electronic fencing system, which locks up those wheels, and that's potentially for them $15,000 to $20,000 cost for them to do that system there. They also had investigated an opportunity to work with their National Grocers Association, and I think all of this information is in your packet, but just so everybody kind of has an understanding. That is a organization across the United States. They are providing an opportunity for stores to register with them, and they will come and I think they charge $6.75 a cart. They'll come by and pick those carts up in the community, return those to the stores. Originally, the initial store has been signed up with them for a couple of weeks, and it's my understanding now that a couple more stores are participating in that program. Is in regards to the potential to fund some of that, Melissa and I chatted a little bit about opportunities we could see in the budget, and unfortunately, there just is not, for this, for a revenue that could help support this, there just isn't that. But that's not to say that should you choose, that we could put aside a different, another project we've already identified for this budget year to potentially free up some funds for that. So I guess from that, if you had some questions.
Well, I think there's some history that needs to be discussed here and talked about. So the way it works now is that we, the city, and any citizen that want, pick up the shopping carts. And there's no charge. We just ask them, some of them we deliver back, I know, and this is police, public works, and others that volunteer in the city to do this. Otherwise, they end up our city shops. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And if I remember correctly, we're picking up about 30 a week.
Thereabout, yeah.
Okay. So that's just Coos Bay. It's not counting North Bend or anyone else. So these carts are costing between $300 and $400 each, according to some of the retailers. So.
And the cost to pick those up is approximately $35 a cart.
Right, for the city, which we don't pass on. So it's an issue that we'll be dealing with, and so we can go into, as we talked about, there's an ORS that allows, we could put into place that they would hire this company would pick them up and return them within 72 hours is what it states, I think, 24 to 72 hours. And so they would do that. And I had asked about having a shopping cart that has a locking wheel on it, and that's what she was referencing. It'd be between $12,000 and $15,000, depending on how many carts, and depending. It's electric fence, it stops a cart from leaving. There are some stores up in north that are doing it now on their own, and it's working because of the cost. So I'm asking, should we try to pass something like this that would do it? If we have this other company, in my opinion, and then we'll everyone else chime in, if we have this other company do this does not stop someone from taking that cart and utilizing it. And then we're dealing with it unless they get reported, and if they don't, they're around town. So I'm more leaning towards the other way and trying to find a way to maybe help these stores on the cost basis. I don't know what's available or not, but I would rather see that because I think this is not going to go away. I think they're still going to take off with them, and this company is still not going to stop a homeless person or a person that's got property in it, necessarily homeless or not, and take it away from them, unless it's reported. So that's my dilemma on it. Maybe this is the first step, but I would like it to initiate something else. So, and we've had some stores that show up and talk to us about this. Bi-Mart, Coos Head, and we've reached out to the other stores. We've gotten some feedback from them. Chief, did you get some feedback from some of the stores, right?
Yeah, and Captain Tom Lindahl's done tremendous amount of work on this, and I think he might have some additional information to share if you had questions for him as well. So
anyway, so that's where we're at on the backstory. That's where we're at now, and this is where we are trying to decide what to do. Because, in my opinion, this was brought up by an individual, and this is what has taken us down this road. Someone just like yourself, John, said they saw someone taking off down the street with it. Isn't it theft of service or property? It is, but it's not resolved the issue. I think all of us have driven by the bottle drop. I was by there today, and there was 10 carts out there. And I know they take care of them, but it's an issue. So anyway, I think this is why this has come to this point. So what we do, I don't know. Anyway, that's my point. And so.
When the manager of Bi-Mart was here, I had asked him if he could check with corporate if they've got any experience with the wheel locking system.
So I did talk to like their regional, who used to be here at the Coos Bay Bi-Mart. They do not have any stores currently that have any, they actually, Coos Bay was the first location that they investigated. So there's no other in there.
Sorry,
footprint.
I cut you off.
Oh, no, I'm just here to answer questions if you have them.
Oh.
Anything else, Drew?
Probably just to highlight it. While it would seem obvious that if a shopping cart is going down the street with somebody, that it's stolen. What's obvious and what can be argued in court don't always match. Sorry, Nate. So regardless of how improbable it is, a good way for us to get sued.
Some more, you're going to enlighten us with some information, I hope.
Correct. So the closest stores I think that we've had that have put electronic braking systems in are Fred Meyer's. I know there's some up in the Portland area, and then Grants Pass also put one in. But that's all at the direction of the business themselves. And then there's some caveats in their ordinances that say, hey, if I put in this electronic braking system, the ordinance doesn't apply to me. So I know that's kind of some business choice directions that those businesses have taken. As far as the theft component, it's a lot more difficult in the current legal landscape to get there. Like Councilor Farmer was saying, we're working at the direction of the council to come up with something similar to our property watch program where businesses can sign up and we know who the emergency contact is for the business, the person that's willing to go testify when we arrest somebody for a stolen shopping cart, and then the dollar value. It's pretty mixed across the board about shopping cart values. Some of them, Walmart, I think they get them, because they're an international business at quite the rate, and I think it's under $100, which means it's a C misdemeanor crime in the state of Oregon, which unfortunately the state doesn't feel deserves much credence as a crime. But we still take action. It's just that kind of component of the rest of the criminal justice system isn't quite as strong as maybe some people would hope. But nonetheless, once we get that kind of in place, it'll give us a little more teeth as law enforcement to address the theft side of things.
So it was by Mark that said they $300 to $400, didn't they? We heard that somewhere? Or am I imagining that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's just spread out for the price. It is $300 to $400 down to $99.
Sure, I
which
get
is
it.
the size
No,
of the
that's
business.
fine.
They get a
I just thought
discount.
maybe I misunderstood. Okay, all right. Questions, comments, counselors, directions? I mean, this has been before us a couple times, so.
Is a Class C misdemeanor under 1,000 now, I think?
Class C misdemeanor would be up to $100.
Oh, okay.
$100 and below, and then 100 to 1,000 would be a B misdemeanor.
Okay. How's the state
Or an
feel
A
on
misdemeanor
those?
for theft. So it's a C, A, and then it goes up to a C felony for a theft one.
I have a thought and then a question. The thought, my assumption, if there's 30 of these a week we're picking up, I'm guessing the stores have already deferred that cost off in their prices already. They've already figured that in their budget. They're going to lose X amount of dollars from stolen. Is a thought. My question is, isn't there like a deposit system for cards too, where they lock up and you put a coin in it, get it, and when you put it back, you get your coin back?
Yes, some places do have that. That is a thing, yes.
Is that cumbersome or something, or is that more expensive or less expensive than the locking wheel, or?
I think it's kind of a similar concept. I don't know that it's probably more expensive. I'd say it's probably less expensive. It's just we haven't had a lot of communication from our local businesses, unfortunately, to kind of have some idea or
Give some
direction.
guidance?
Yeah.
Thank you.
How long, just out of curiosity, have you been working on a shopping cart issue?
Over a year?
And when we had the homeless work group, were you also working on that?
Yes.
So it's been a few years,
Correct.
trying to find the right thing that fits. My question is on the, is it okay to go?
Yeah, absolutely.
My question is on the Property Watch program. How is that, how would you expand that program to include shopping carts?
So the way the chief and I have kind of envisioned it is, we just need to have some communication with the business that lays out kind of what their shopping carts look like, what the dollar value is for them, that they do want to be the victim of a theft should we come across it, and then who this person is that's going to go testify on the criminal complaint. So I really think it's just kind of an application that kind of hits those points that we can retain on file and then maybe renew it every year. And then also the component of, do they allow shopping carts to be loaned out to people maybe who live close by the store who are commuting on foot, or if they have old carts that they give out. When I ran around to the 18 businesses, there were several that actually give away their old shopping carts, which is kind of counterintuitive to what we're trying to accomplish, but they have been doing that locally.
They give them away?
Yes. People that come up and ask, they'll give them away.
So that creates more of an issue of knowing whether or not it's actually been given away.
Correct.
Or whether it's been stolen. That was the only question I had, thank you. Well, you answered the other one, the 18 establishments.
Thoughts, Carmen?
I guess, this is really coming up, and I realize it seems like we're passing this off to the businesses to have to pay for this. But as Councilor Cribbins mentioned, I would imagine that most of these businesses have already accounted for this in their budget. However, the city is now incurring a cost, and we're trying to figure out a way to where we also, as a community, don't have to pay for these costs. So, it's just one solution. I hope that we find the way that works for the businesses and for the community members, so that this isn't an issue. And honestly, at this point, I'm not really sure where I lie on this. I think I still need more information, or I want to hear more solutions. It's a difficult one. They are a problem. And we're seeing a multitude of mixed responses on whether or not they want to press charges on these carts, whether or not they want them back, whether or not they give them out. It's hard to figure out, but it is something that we need to address. So I'm grateful that you've spent so much time dealing with this and researching it and trying to find the way to move forward. And, to me, that property watch option does sound like a good direction to go.
So why don't I just put something out there and let's see if we can get this moving forward. And it's going to be 2 weeks for the council meeting. I still support the electric fence and the locking wheel, but I think that's going to be something that we need to take a step with. See if we can reach out to maybe some of the businesses would be willing to partner on a program. Maybe they don't all want to do it, but maybe if we partnered with them on it financially in some fashion, would they be interested in doing it or not? But I think we should go ahead and do the Northwest Grocers Association now, at least to put something in place to take that burden off us trying to pick them up, hopefully saying that they all the stores would have to have this participate. Is that correct? Is that what I'm understanding?
So that was going to be our recommendation. I mean, one thing we always say is that, our municipal code is living. So what we have today may not be what we have in the future. And so we could walk this forward very much within how the state's statutes are written and include this option for them to use this association to do the collection for them. That it's very much built around how the state's code is written. It has the tagging for who to call when you find this cart and those kinds of things. And if that doesn't work, we are no further behind. We can step down the next, what's the next option?
But I think that we can try to get them to buy in on the other one. There is a cost associated with this. And Fred Meyer's Grants Pass and some other places initiated this by themselves. Maybe we can do a partnership with them to get it done and would eliminate this because if they did that, they wouldn't have to do that. So maybe try to encourage it or look at maybe going down the road with that. Now, the other thing that's very disheartening to me and disturbing is now they're giving these carts away. Is there any way for us to do some kind of buyback from them or something? Because we don't want these out. I mean, it's like we're trying to resolve an issue, and then they're giving these away, and it's defeating the purpose of what we're trying to get to here. Is there any way to do that? I guess that's something I would like to see staff maybe see if there's a way that we can try to keep those from being given away. I don't know what that would be.
I'm just curious. I don't think they're giving them away specifically to homeless.
To whoever.
They are.
They are?
Yes.
Oh, they are, okay. Then that probably does need to be addressed.
And that may be able to be handled through a conversation.
Yeah.
I think who the businesses are. I probably could handle that through a conversation with them if they kind of can align with the goal of the purpose of all this. But I can report back on that.
So anyway, that would be my suggestion, Council. It's a first step, I should say. I think that we need to think about other steps because I still don't think it's going to resolve the issue about the homeless walking off, or I shouldn't specifically say them, but anyone taking the cart and utilizing it for whatever they want and then dumping it somewhere and we're having to deal with it. So, but this would help at least pick it up. And this will take part of that problem and part of the cost off the city, I believe. So
I had one more question on the electronic system. Did you say that there's only really 2 locations where that has been implemented and it was implemented by the establishment or the corporation itself?
I think he mentioned a couple of stores that we know of. I think the mayor's also shared one in Salem that we know of, but those were store implemented and not city ordinance.
So that would be my concern, is that that we're taking a step in a direction that a lot of other communities haven't, and it is a significant cost.
I know, but it might be the step in the right direction. We could be a leader in this too. So
Well-
there's two ways to look at this. But I think it's something that we need to keep forefront and keep moving down that road, because we'll see how this works. I think it's a first step, but I think that we need to keep the other thing in place and see if there's a way that we can partner with them and encourage them. So might be.
I always like to try the other approach first before we drop the hammer.
A year we've been doing this
I
in the
know.
homelessness.
But we have a couple of options.
I know. So
The other thing I would just add to the conversation, it maybe doesn't make it an easier conversation, but what we've seen in the work we've done as leaders, we sometimes didn't bring our partners along with us. And so in this path, if we walk this way and we get a little bit more strict, we might have North Bend come with us as best as we can, because we saw with the camping ordinance, it's just been going back and forth, because we did it, then they did it, and so that might be our challenge, because we do have stores that are in both cities, so that may be.
Do we know what North Bend is doing with, because I know that they have a very similar issue with shopping carts.
I'm not aware of them having any conversations around this yet, but we can certainly.
So one question, if we initiate this, right, they pick up a cart from a store. What happens if they take this back and they don't want to take it? Then what?
I think they register with this program, and so they're
Are they
picking up.
obligated, is the store obligated to take the cart back?
Yeah, that's part of the process.
Okay, all right. Because that's not happening now.
Sometimes.
I'm just saying, it's not
Sometimes it is.
happening. Well, I've known people, volunteers, and we've reached out, correct me if I'm wrong, we've tried to take them back. I think Public Works has been involved in this, and sometimes they don't want them. And that's, how many do we have sitting down at the shop?
Yeah, I don't know the numbers right now that we have at the city shops, but you're absolutely correct. That has been the case from time to time. And I think one of the things I would say, kind of the plan that maybe is being proposed here tonight, regardless if we end up getting to electronic locking system, I think we're still going to need an ordinance in place. So we can maybe, if this is agreeable to the council, maybe we start there with that ordinance in place that's already going to need to be in place, and then keep moving toward, ultimately maybe electric brake system or something of that nature. So I don't think we're at any loss by implementing this. It's just kind of moving toward that direction.
So is the council?
And just to add, so if they aren't compliant and don't pick up their cart, there's the language in the ordinance that would allow the city to levy a fine against the business for noncompliance.
Okay. So does the council agree that this should be the first step maybe, and then we can keep reviewing other alternatives?
What was the first step again?
This ordinance here, it's Northwest Grocers Association, and it's a company that's local and already doing this, right?
Yes, I understand them to be working with 3 stores. Currently, that's the last.
And so what they do is they will pick this up and return them to the store for $6.75 to the store, and they will return them within 72 hours.
I like that.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll have another.
So the stores have to agree to this? What's the compliance?
Yes, we passed an ordinance and
We
they.
have to have an ordinance in
We
place.
pass an ordinance that says the stores have
Yes.
to be in compliant, and they have to buy these carts back.
Yes.
That's our recommendation, and maybe that wasn't clear enough for you, but that's what we were recommendation, was to follow the ordinance, which is very much in line with the state's statute. And we've got a vendor who's already willing to come in and kind of do the tagging and the retrieval process.
And they do this in other parts of the state.
Yeah, it's a National Grocers
Okay.
Association,
All right.
so, yeah.
So this will come back for ratification in 2 weeks. We'll take more testimony if anyone wants to give us input, and we'll make a decision at that time, one way or the other.
Sorry, two more cents. So
Go ahead.
Because I realize I'm jumping in this new. So over the last year, you've already tried to work with the merchants on ways to do this and gotten no uniform sort of answer.
Correct. Yes.
And actually, I would suggest it was probably longer than that, because we held or attempted to hold a meeting with them during the homeless work group time.
Yeah.
And I think we had 2 folks show up?
Yes, correct.
Yeah,
From businesses.
from businesses.
Yes.
Reminding you, we have 18, I believe.
Yes.
It may be exacerbated, but a little levity. I'm pretty sure cart theft has been around for at least 40 years. I'm not going to say any names, but I've been known to roll around the city streets in a shopping cart as a teenager.
Ah.
I don't think it's new.
Okay, any other discussion on this? All right, thank you. Next item, discussion on restructuring of business license fee schedule. Mark?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is something we brought to you last November, or maybe it was December. And you gave us some direction to reach out to the business community and get some feedback. So the Fire Marshal, Amy Linder, and I met with Chamber of Commerce and complied, got some good feedback. And so we want to propose it again, maybe just taking some of it off. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy to get us started, but I can answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, hi, Amy.
Good evening, Council. Yes, as Chief said, we brought this proposal before you several months ago. It's relatively the same proposal, a couple of slight modifications after our conversation with the Chamber of Commerce. We had a wonderful meeting with their Legislative Action Committee to discuss the proposal and did a little bit more digging specifically based on Council's questions around the rental property permit piece and how that impact would lay out. So I am a little bit more prepared with some breakdown of those rental numbers if council would like those. But for the most part, the proposal is unchanged. So any additional questions, feedback, direct numbers we can answer for you this evening.
So you referenced North Bend in here. Does North Bend do a fire inspection with their fee?
They have a separate fee. They have the business license fee, and then they do have the separate fire inspection fee. And that was one of the things that Chamber of Commerce really liked, is that we were modeling after North Bend to try to bring some consistency between the two cities in terms of doing business. Our understanding is North Bend has limited resources to actually implement the fire inspection fee component of it. So we're not sure what their schedule is and what their implementation is, where we would have more of a regular rotation and schedule for that inspection.
No, you're not suggesting that we add this plus the business license fee. This is to replace the business license.
So it's two components. So there would be the business license fee, which would be a simplification of our fee schedule, which now is a sliding schedule. It would be a flat fee. And that would apply every year for your fee, your business license. The fire inspection fee is separate and is only paid when that service is provided. And so that is a rotating schedule depending on the hazard of the business. So our smaller B and M occupancies would only be inspected about every 3 to 5 years, versus our higher hazard, high occupancy assembly type occupancies would be inspected on a more frequent basis.
What kind of cost are we looking at?
It would actually be the same. We're proposing the same fee for both the business license and the inspection fee. So a flat fee of $120 per year, and the fire inspection fee would be $120.
So potentially it'd be less cost to businesses?
Correct. For businesses with higher, so just for example, we have about 300 general contractor licenses we issue every year, and it would actually be a decrease in their fee. They don't have a brick and mortar operation, so they would not be subject to the fire inspection fee. And our businesses that have higher employee counts would be a lower fee. We have a difficult time pinpointing that employee count when we do our business licenses, because employees really vary throughout the year as we're tourist and seasonal driven. And so it's not a really accurate way for us to get that. And the number of employees doesn't impact the amount of time it takes us to physically inspect the location or staff time to process the business license.
My only question, my concern is that this really impacts the small business.
Correct.
I mean, considerably. We're talking somebody that might be a small business that's paying $25 or $30 a year, and now they're going to be paying $240 at times.
At times.
At least $120, and then every 5 years they're going to pay another $120. And the thing is that I know that we had the capacity, but I remember when the fireman, Mark, used to show up, and this was complimentary, as it states in this ordinance, and they do an inspection, and I think that was great. You know, it was a service we offered. I know that the rentals are another issue, and I think there's something that needs to be figured into this, because it's not being done. And, you know, we're talking about living spaces, and I think that's really critical. But when it comes to a business, you know, and I mean, are we talking 900 businesses is what we're talking about?
Correct. We have about 900 brick and mortar businesses. And just one comment, Mr. Mayor, I would like to address the firefighter walkthrough. And I know that that's been done in the past. And one thing that's really important to keep in mind is that that's a very different focus. Our firefighters are not trained as inspectors. They are trained as operations folks. So they're not certified in the breadth and depth of the fire code. So their walkthroughs were predominantly based on pre-planning and their familiarity with the business in the event of an emergency. They were able to point out very minor extension cords, obvious blocked exits, but they are not versed in the fire code. And what we're talking about is a true fire code inspection by a certified fire code inspector.
So, okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate. So I have a business and I've been working for, okay, I'll take my restaurant when I was there, 30 years. You're going to come in and you're going to say, and I've been following the codes when I remodeled and did anything else. I followed the codes, did what I needed to do. Now someone's going to come in and tell me, oh, sorry, you're in violation. And now, not just besides the fee, I'm going to be paying maybe hundreds of thousands, take that back, thousands of dollars to rectify something that needs to be done, that I've had inspected in the past and everything was fine. Is that correct?
That is a potential. Our component is not penalty-based. We try to educate first, and the majority of things can be rectified pretty simply. But it is something I face when doing inspections now that I get the fire department has walked through in the past and not said anything. And it is a challenge, but it doesn't negate the fact that we have some serious safety violations that have been found fairly recently, some significant change of occupancies, significant lock and egress issues, non-compliant, non-functional fire protection systems that have not been addressed and would not have been caught by a firefighter walkthrough.
I understand that, but we're talking, this is really coming across difficult for me. I'm going to have to think about it. Another example would be that maybe all of a sudden this place needs to be sprinklered now. I mean, how many thousands of dollars would that be?
The only case that it would be that kind of a requirement is if it was a change of occupancy. If they completely were doing something different that was not permitted, that's the only time that kind of a retrofit would be required. So there are some limitations on carte blanche, super expensive changes.
I'm going to make one more comment, then I'll open up to the council. The other thing is that we asked you to look into getting some business feedback, and you went to the chamber and the legislative group. That's a very small group. I think that's not really representative of our area. I think that we need to get more businesses involved in the discussion, maybe the Coos Bay Downtown Association, maybe others, some open comments to get some feedback, and so that businesses understand what this is going to look like, because I think this is going to have a sticker shock if we did this in this fashion, and that's just my take. Anyway, I'll open this up. Who wants to start, or anyone, or no one?
I'll jump in.
Okay.
As a business owner, I've always thought that our business license fee was actually quite low. I think I'm currently paying the higher end, but when it comes to fire safety, I really don't see this as any different as like an OSHA inspection or anything. It's just about compliance. And so for myself, I feel like an inspection to know that my business, my employees, and my patrons are safe, and I am following the letter of the law and avoiding any potential liability. I see value in it. If fire marshal came in and said, whoa, your fire system is not working, you should do something about that. I would want to do something about that. And I don't think $120 for an inspection every 2, 3, 5 years, whatever it is absurd. We just went ahead and changed our code so that businesses are compliant for their fats, oil, and grease program, and that is something that it's a service that we are requiring these businesses to comply with because it helps the overall safety of our community by keeping our lines clean and lowers our service calls. And that makes sense. And I see this as being a similar issue. Personally, I don't think that these are absurd dollar amounts. If you're looking at the schedules between, you know, Astoria, Brookings, Reedsport, I mean, all of these are, you know, are not, we're right in line with everybody. And I think that this flat fee does make sense. I could entertain a small business reduction, so there's maybe two fees, you know, a $50 and a $120 based on employee accounts or brick and mortar. I could see that, but honestly, I think our business license fees have been low. So that's just my point of view as a business owner.
Anyone else?
To get a broader engagement, I'd be curious if we can just do a mailer to all the registered businesses to see what they say back about the proposed rates. My experience in nonprofits, we already had higher requirements than this, so I'm going to be listening to businesses on this one.
The only thing is I mean, I didn't realize there was going to be another fee on top of it. If it just was one flat fee and that included the fire services, I could see some support for it. But when we're doing that and then being charging for the fee, did we figure out what the cost would be just if we just charged the business license fee and not the inspection fee?
The challenge is sort of the goal of this is in order for us to have the capacity to do regular maintenance fire code inspections, we need a full-time inspector. And so that's really the goal of the increase of fees. And that was part of the consideration in how we came up with that. And again, trying to model off of our neighbor and having that separate fee and knowing that it would be on a hazard-based rotation schedule.
So what doesn't show here, the license fees are one thing, and we're in compliance or we're close to other communities. What it doesn't show is, are all these other cities that are listed here doing a separate fire fee?
They're not. They're all over the map in terms of how that's applied. So I can speak, so my experience from Eugene, Springfield, they don't do it as an inspection fee. They do it as an operational permit. So within the state adopted fire code, there are all kinds of required optional permits. So they don't have a business license program. They do it more off of every time you do an inspection for a licensed facility, there's a licensed care fee that's required to do that on behalf to get your license for the state. We also do those, and we receive no additional compensation for those currently. They do operational permits for a lot of the things that we do as business licenses, and I can say their operational fees are considerably higher than what our business license and inspection fee would be combined.
In Eugene and Springfield?
Correct.
Right, but we don't know what these other cities are doing for fees, for inspection fees, or if they're even doing it.
Correct. Again, there's not a direct translation because not all cities do business licenses. Some of them approach them through a permit type basis, so we're not always comparing apples to apples.
Right, and so that's what I guess, that's the crux, the part of what I'm saying. We're not comparing apples to apples. We're comparing things to something new that we're initiating. The only thing that makes me a little nervous, because I've been in business, and maybe it doesn't bother Carmen, but it does bother me that I'm opening myself up to an expense that might be outrageous, and that can be considering. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be done, but I know how, I mean, if you go through an inspection, when you get things done and you think that you're following the law. I mean, if a business comes in, Amy, and you inspect it, they feel that they're following what needs to be done. In 3 years, they come back and they find out something's changed, and all of a sudden they're having to upgrade, and there's a cost associated with that. That's my concern. So.
Understood.
If you change use in a building, I think that you should be required to.
No, I'm talking about, this could happen without changing use.
Well, it can.
Right.
But it's usually because you're a delinquent in some way to the code. And that's not good either.
Well, maybe and maybe not. There's always new laws coming down. So the point being is if I got a license and I got inspected and 3 years later something comes new, this is going to come through and I'm going to have to upgrade to meet that compliance.
I don't see that as
Mr.
any
Mayor,
different
that's
in terms of...
Not exactly. The fire
Correct.
code is a maintenance code.
Correct.
It's not retroactive. So if the state comes out with a law that says that all businesses have to be sprinkled, it's from that point forward. It's not retroactive. It doesn't require businesses to go back that are not and force them into compliance. So it's not quite as offensive as it might sound.
Okay.
Maybe for some clarification, one, the business license fees were the sliding scale from 26 to 157, right?
Correct.
And then we're talking about proposing a $100, $120 fire inspection fee.
Correct. Our current business license has a sliding scale. We are proposing to simplify that to a flat fee of 120.
Okay.
And then adding a fire inspection fee that is only paid on the years that you are actually inspected.
And it would be sliding?
No, it would also be a flat fee of $120.
Okay. And so then just between the conversation between Mayor and
Carmen and Joe.
Thank you, Carmen and Joe. From my aspect, from a healthcare facility, I get state audited. And I think what maybe clarifies there, it depends on which auditor comes through me of what they flag and what they don't. And I think that might be the frustrating part, is what you're saying is one person came through and said I'm okay, and then 2 years later, a separate person came through and said I wasn't okay. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think sometimes that might be the concern. If there was some sort of standard that you knew I'm following the code, and each time somebody comes in, whether they were a new person or a different person, I was going to get the same response.
And that is certainly our intent. That's why we have the fire code, and that is what we enforce. Again, the challenge and the past practice of our fire crews walking through, that's not their focus. They're not certified in the fire code. And so they don't know what they don't know.
I do believe you, and I do believe that's intent, but the state auditors are all, at least in my case, they're all qualified to do that, and each one of them interprets it differently.
Correct, and that does happen.
And that can, as a business owner, that can be frustrating.
Absolutely, and that's where we have the oversight. A fire inspector would work for me as the fire marshal, and those are things that are certainly a concern. It's a concern with our building inspection staff as well, is consistency. And just one point, Mr. Mayor, on that, the changes, one of the things that I see frequently is, so the building code is our construction code, and it's built to code. We issue a certificate of occupancy. And I would argue that the building is the absolute safest it's going to be on the day that we issue that certificate of occupancy. Mm-hmm. And then people move in. And then things change. And we don't know what is going on. So that's the piece of the maintenance code where the fire code then maintains it. So we go in 6 months later, a year later, and they've been broken into. And now there's 4 deadbolts on a mandatory egress door. Those aren't allowed by the fire code it's an egress door. So then we work with them in an educational aspect of how we balance need for egress, public safety, firefighter safety, which is the other main component of fire code maintenance, and security. And there are code compliant locks that meet that deadbolt security. And so yes, that would be an expense for them to make that correction, to bring them into compliance, and they would have a multitude of options to do that, some less secure than others.
Yeah, I see this as kind of similar to a health code inspection, where health code inspectors come in, some of them are super focused on one specific aspect of safety, and so you have to do things. But the inspections are really important. If the inspector comes in and is like, your refrigerator isn't working, you have to throw all of this product away. And I'm like, oh, damn, that sucks. And, I've had issues where I had to call refrigeration people right then and there, and that it does incur a cost, but it is catching things for public safety, and I do believe in that. So I guess that's where I'm at. I think that it's good to be in compliance and to make sure that the places that we are permitting are within compliance. That's just...
Public safety is important, but I think regulatory oversight needs to be a concern. And I think that's what I'm trying to imply here. Mm-hmm. And as far as health inspectors, and I know, I've dealt with Rick, who's the director now of public health down there, and I'll come in and not have a problem. But somebody else comes behind him in 6 months, and I'm scrambling to try to get things squared away. And I said, well, this is what happened. I've gotten to the point where, and we can go on and belabor this, but it's not always, and I think that's what Troy's saying. Yeah. We got to make sure that it's being, and I think there's interpretation. That's the other thing that we need to think about. And Amy, you're not saying that they're going to be every 5 years on the fire inspection. It depends on the business.
Correct.
It depends on different things. There's all these circumstances that are going to determine how often they need to get a fire inspection.
Correct.
So it could be yearly, it could be 6 months, it could be whatever.
So
it's open-ended.
a year would be the minimum. So
Okay.
annually, anywhere from annually to every 3 years, based on the hazard of the nature of operation.
Okay.
So for example, schools are required by state law to be inspected every 2 years. So they'd be every 2 years. A restaurant such as, Restaurant O or Seven Devils is likely to be every 3 years. If there are habitual problems, which we do see from time to time, then it may be increased based on their past performance. But as a general rule, those businesses or mercantiles would be every 3 years. An example of one that's every year would be an assembly like a theater or a church, because they are there's more public gathering, more potential for loss of life if there were an incident. So it depends on the use. So it's not arbitrary. It's actually spelled out, and I think you have that information with you. By the way, I have handouts for any business owners that you would like to see what we're talking about. I have handouts so you can look at that and provide us some feedback. But so it is actually set ahead of schedule. So.
Correct. The only exception to that schedule is those that are licensed by the state through a different division of the state. The state mandates that they have a fire inspection, and those do come through our office. And so those are on a request basis. So we are required to provide that service. However, we receive no compensation for doing that work.
But there, Chief Anderson, just so this says there will not, schools, churches, and nonprofits will not be charged a fee.
That's the business license fee. That's the current practice.
It's got nothing to do with the fire inspection fee? They will be paying that?
They would be paying the fire inspection fee because it actually takes staff time to go out and do the inspection.
Okay, I didn't see that listed here. It said they're just exempt.
Just from the business license.
I think most business owners care about their staff, their customers, and their structure. I mean, because if it goes, there's their business. And I do understand the point of regulation, and I know as a business owner, I want to do it correctly. I don't mind the separation of the fees, because I think if you have it all lumped into one, then you're kind of deferring that across all business owners. So even if I'm doing everything right, I'm paying for the individual who's not doing everything right. So I don't know that I mind separating the two fees out. I suppose in your best effort, you're trying to do it consistently, but that's my concern, is that these regulations are consistent inspection after inspection.
Absolutely, and that is a focus, and our focus is also on the education component. One thing I will note, I do get frequent phone calls from insurance companies asking for our inspection data. When's the last time this business was inspected? Do they have any open violations? I have a local significant occupant load building in town right now that their insurance is refusing to renew their policy until they are under an enforcement action currently, and until the insurance company hears that I have successfully signed off their egress plan, their insurance is involved in that conversation. So there are sort of multiple layers that play together, and there are many times when we tell the insurance company, we have never inspected this place from a fire code standpoint.
And the only thing is I can just say that, so no one else is doing this in this area. North Bend does it if they can and they have the availability to do it. So we would be the only city, if we adopted this, to do this. The other thing I need to tell you that I feel that right now, and it's not got anything to do with this, or it would just make it seem that we're hard to do business with. And I can tell you that is a common theme that's been going on, I've been hearing for the last year and a half. So I just don't want that to make it come across that we're not that way. I think that we're not, but I think there's some things that they're dealing with. So that's just a concern that I have, just a comment.
I have. Well, I had some questions and some concerns. Some of those have been addressed because one of mine was the consistency. And I think, I was going to ask about contracting out, but that might create more inconsistency. But I think the bottom line for me that it boils down to is I don't think we talk to enough businesses. And I think it's really important that we hear from those businesses.
So, Council, there's some public comments you want to make. Somebody or wants to comment on this? Okay, so let's take the comments. Who wants to go first? Amy, thank you. We'll bring you back up probably.
Adam, Coos Bay, Palmer. So, I don't know how many fires Joe Benet's had at Benetti's, 100 at least, and I've had probably 10,000. So, and we've probably the oldest buildings around here. So, I don't know. I guess I have a question is why the added extra fees? That's a 350% increase? Is that correct?
That's not even close.
Oh, well, we pay $35 now.
So one employee?
No,
How
I
many
don't.
employees do you have?
It ranges. It's, it's between 5 and 13.
That's exactly the problem, is that your fee, you're charged a business license fee based on your number of employees.
Correct.
How many employees do you have?
No, right now we have 12.
So right now, if you have 12,
110 or something?
But Mark, I think it says on there, you average it out for the year. You don't, just because during the summer you have 12 and you have 6 during the winter. So anyway, whatever it may be, so.
105.
so right now you're paying $105 a year.
Correct.
And we're asking you to pay $120.
Is that one fee or is that both fees?
That's for business license.
Correct.
Let's just look at business license.
Sure.
North Bend is $118.45. So consistency, we're 120, 118 is very consistent.
Okay.
Or pretty close.
And can I just make one point? I had a business in North Bend, and it went from a very low fee to a $100 flat fee, and that has gone up every year. They raise it, their percentage that they can every year, so it will be higher again next year.
That's correct. And that's one thing that we did hear from the LOC, I'm sorry, not the LOC, Chamber of Commerce, is that they prefer not to have it increase with the cost of living. They just want a flat fee that would stay the same for a period of time, 5 years or whatever it might be. That's kind of what we were thinking we would do instead of including a annual increase, because it just makes it a little messier with
Right, I think
businesses.
they had to do that because of the limitations that were placed by the vote that only allowed them to raise a certain percentage.
Yeah, like last year.
So I, like Councilor Matthews, felt that our fees were a little bit low.
Yeah, last year, I think North Bend's business license fee was 109, and this year it's 118. So it did go up, and we're looking at a flat fee of 120. And then their the fire inspection fee, again, North Bend charges a fire inspection fee of 114
or something, I think.
114.
Yeah, something like that.
So we're trying to be consistent with what North Bend is doing. That inspection fee, you're getting something for that. You're getting a service. So we're actually coming out and making sure that your business is safe for your customers, for you, and for the public. And that helps the entire city. It protects our commerce.
Mm-hmm. So what is that fee now?
Right now, there is no fire inspection fee because you're not getting a fire inspection.
So they pay 118 right now.
Flat fee, correct. So I've had you in my building looking for fire, not you personally, but I've had every 3 years or so, somebody stops in and like we said, like the health inspectors, sometimes the mixer's okay here, sometimes it's not. So we're raising it from 0 to 135 to
So
120.
do you remember the last time you had a fire inspection?
Oh gosh, it's been 3 to 5 years, a while. But my point is, you guys do it.
I don't think we do.
Oh, okay.
So we haven't done a fire inspection in quite some time. And even as Fire Marshal mentioned, it's not the same. It's a courtesy walkthrough for looking for some of the common issues.
Potential.
It's not a real fire inspection.
Okay. So another fee for that, sure. So as far as being retro packed, am I grandfathered in since the building was built in 1972?
Correct.
Is that forever? Or is that this year, or when you decide to do
that's
it?
the way the fire code is written.
Okay, so if I sell it to someone before this is written, they're good forever. Nothing can be changed. No walls have to be moved, no electrical, as long as a building does not get added onto.
If the same type of business moves in, are you a restaurant?
Correct.
Yeah, so if your restaurant then becomes an Airbnb, then that changes the rules.
Gotcha.
But if it stays a restaurant, then the rules stay the same.
Gotcha. And all that literature will be, you're grandfathered in forever. You will never have any fees ever to move anything, to do anything.
Yeah, there's always some.
There doesn't have to be, because if I could raise my prices to up your fees, I mean, I would. But unfortunately, we've been squeezed pretty hard. I know it doesn't seem like much, but we don't get cost of livings. We don't get any of that stuff. We don't get any of that stuff, ever. We pay for it. So that's all I gotta say is, I know it doesn't seem like much, but it all adds up. Every last bit adds up.
Oh, I'm
And
sure
I've
it
never
does.
had a fire. I've never even called you guys for a fire in 8 years, 21 years I've worked there. So.
Yeah, well,
I know, lucky me, but the houses have fires all the time.
Yeah.
So we should probably check into the rental agencies a lot more than the restaurants.
Yeah, and they're initiating that, which I'm glad to see, but that's something new, right? The apartments that we're doing the rentals?
Correct. So apartments are commercial buildings, and so they still would get a business license fee, and they would go into the inspection schedule for all the common spaces. And then we'll have a separate discussion, probably early next year, about if we want to do some rental housing mandates.
Okay.
But rentals currently are in our business license structure.
Okay.
Gotcha. That's all I had. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Adam. Dee Dee, do you have a comment?
I guess my concern would be, and I'm fine with fees, even though we get fees and fees and fees and fees and fees and fees and fees on top of fees, being small business owners, is the consistency part, because I love when the health inspector comes. We geek out, we talk about microbes and bacteria, and my little nursey brain goes in, and we're like, oh man, that's so gross, oh, that's so cool. But we cook with fire. That's how we make my food. So am I going to be inspected every year, where Adam and Carmen are inspected every 3? Is it going to change like they're trying to do in New York City with the emissions from the wood-fired ovens? And I just would like a guideline, because it seems like right now it's so open to interpretation, and it would be open to interpretation. Maybe they want 7 inches in front of the mouth of the oven, but this inspector said 3 was fine. And it was a big damn deal to get that oven in that building to begin with. We had to have people from here talk to people from Salem, to talk to people from Portland, where other restaurants had wood-fired ovens. Where do we store the wood? How far away does it have to be from the mouth of the oven? How far does I would just like a little more clarification, because it does add up. And yes, I do want our space to be safe, and I'm pretty obnoxious about that. Like, no, you can't have the dish tray in front of the door. We have to have both doors open. We have to have this. I think it would be fair to ask for more clarification, because right now I'm the only place in town like that, but there could be more. And I think it would not be cool if I'm getting inspected every single year just because we're a little bit different.
My understanding would be a restaurant is going to be every 3 years. Is that correct?
It depends on the size of the restaurant. A restaurant that seats under 50 people is considered a B business occupancy.
650?
50.
Okay, right, okay.
50 is a magic number in the code. Below that is a B, or a standard business occupancy. Above that is an assembly that has additional requirements. So there is a distinction in classification between a B and an A. So that is in the table where A's are typically inspected a little more frequently. But most of our business, we don't have a lot of large restaurants. Most of ours are B occupancies. And the only other time we would increase that frequency is if there was a pattern of violation year after year, in which there's non-compliance.
So you said, okay, if a restaurant seats 100 people, how often?
That would be an A2 occupancy.
Can you come to the microphone?
Sorry, Amy, that was my fault. Thanks, Dee.
Mark, do you have that table closer than I do in my hands?
yeah, but I don't have my glasses.
I got it. Assembly
Do you have this
occupancies are
market
annually.
anywhere?
So a restaurant that seats 100 would be an assembly occupancy that would be inspected annually.
Okay. So there's going to be quite a few restaurants that are going to be inspected annually then.
The other component with restaurants that's important is there are some specific requirements for restaurants, especially those that have grease-laden vapors. So their hood has to be cleaned every 6 months. Their suppression system has to be serviced every year. Those reports come to us automatically, and we're seeing an increase in cook lines being changed, suppression systems not being upgraded. We've red tagged 3 in the last 6 months of changes that are non-compliant, and businesses telling their contractors, yeah, we're just not going to fix that.
And I totally understand that.
So those are the components that we're trying to get ahead
Those are common
of.
practices, at least in a restaurant.
Yeah, I've changed my line before and then had to change my
Sure.
hood arrangement and
Yep.
sprinkler system. So,
Right.
yeah, yeah, it just makes sense.
All right, so, anyway, I have a few concerns, but everyone else seems to be on board with this, so we just going to move this forward to the next council meeting? Under this, the way it is?
Well, I would question if you are still wanting to have some business involvement. That has come up.
Okay, well, so do we, Stephanie brought up the point that she felt that there should be more business involvement in this discussion. I mean, discussion is always good, so people understand and are more comfortable with it. I have no problem with that, but how's the rest of the council feel?
Or at least get the information like you said you would provide, so that they can take a look at it.
Certainly, and that's our intent.
Provide input when we have it come before the council.
Is kind of the timeline is just based on when our renewals for business licenses go out this fall, is to try to get this in front of council. If it's adopted, then we would put together a full education packet that would go out this fall with all of the business license renewals, with that information of the new fee, the inspection schedule. And in terms, I hear the concern from council about consistency loud and clear. I can tell you we address that again on the building inspection side. We meet on the weekly basis, and those are important issues, that those consistency items are intact. And in regard to wood-fired business, there's a specific code section in the fire code about wood-fired ovens. So there is no 7 inches this time, 3 inches this time. The code is black and white. This is how we regulate wood-fired ovens. And that's, again, kind of what that fire code is all about. A lot of these issues have been addressed. They're pretty standard in the fire code, and if we're having interpretation issues, interpretation of any code falls to the fire code or building code official for that interpretation of this is how we apply it here, and then there is expected consistency amongst our inspectors.
Okay, so under that scenario, we move forward? Yes?
I want to say, as a small business owner for 30 years in this city, I'm in almost complete agreement with Carmen. I drove 4 teenagers through Taco Bell and spent double what my business license cost me last weekend. It's ridiculously low. I've been around. I remember when, Randy Carpenter and those other volunteers died. John Inskeep went to jail. This is the type of thing that this is going to prevent. It's not often, but it's huge when it happens. It's devastating. And I trust the motives of the fire marshal, which is important. So that's all I want to say.
Thanks, John. All right, so move forward, next council meeting, is that what I'm hearing? Okay, right, okay. Anything else on this topic? Okay, we are at the end. Does anyone else have any more comments? We have lots of public comments tonight. It's nice to hear.
Yeah, it is.
All right, hearing none, I will adjourn the work session, and all these items will be going to the next, not the shopping cart, yeah, everything's going to be going to the next council meeting, absolutely. So thank you for your input, and we'll talk to you later. Meeting's adjourned. Work session.
Thank you.